Christmas had always been my favorite time of year. The smell of fresh pine, the warmth of the fireplace, and the twinkling glow of Christmas lights always filled our home with a sense of magic. Every year, my family and I had a tradition. We would go to the local tree lot and pick out the biggest, most beautiful Christmas tree we could find. It was a ritual we all cherished. But this year was different. This year, we were late. By the time we made it to the lot on Christmas Eve, most of the good trees were already gone. Snow crunched beneath our boots as we wandered through the few remaining options, the cold December air biting at our faces. Just as we were about to settle for a small, unimpressive tree, I spotted something in the farthest corner of the lot. It was tall, full, and untouched, standing alone beneath the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. It looked perfect, yet something about it felt wrong. The tree lot owner, an older man with a deep frown and tired eyes, hesitated when we pointed to it. "That one?" he asked, his voice wary. "Yeah," my dad said, clapping his hands together. "It's perfect." The man shifted uncomfortably. "No one's wanted that one all season," he muttered. "Well, I guess we're lucky then," my mom said with a cheerful smile. The man didn't smile back. He stared at the tree for a long moment before finally speaking again. "If you take it, make sure you don't leave the lights on overnight." His words sent an uneasy chill down my spine. "Why not?" I asked, but he just shook his head. My dad laughed it off, brushing the comment aside. Within minutes, we had strapped the tree to the roof of our car and were on our way home. The whole drive back, I kept thinking about what the old man had said. What was wrong with the tree? That evening, we set up the tree in the living room near the fireplace, just like we always did. As my mom unpacked the ornaments and my little brother Jamie strung the lights, I reached out to touch the tree. The moment my fingers brushed the bark, a sharp, icy chill ran through me. It wasn't just cold from being outside. It was unnaturally cold. Wet, even. Like it had been left out in a storm for days. "Does this tree feel weird to you?" I asked, glancing at my mom. She looked up from untangling a strand of lights. "Weird how?" "I don't know. It's too cold," I muttered, rubbing my hands together. Jamie laughed. "It's a tree, dummy. Trees aren't supposed to be warm." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling. As the night went on, strange things began happening. The Christmas lights flickered, even though they were brand new. Ornaments fell off the branches on their own, rolling eerily across the floor. At one point, while placing a star near the top, I could have sworn I heard whispering coming from deep within the branches. Then, after we had finished decorating and gone to bed, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty. As I made my way downstairs to get a glass of water, I passed by the living room and stopped dead in my tracks. The Christmas tree had moved. It wasn't in the same position we had left it. It had shifted slightly to the left, its branches now twisted in unnatural angles. The lights, which we had turned off before bed, were glowing dimly, flickering in and out like a dying breath. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at the tree, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Then, without warning, an ornament shot off the tree, shattering against the far wall. A deep, guttural sound, almost like a growl, rumbled from within the branches, and then, in the dim glow of the flickering lights, I saw it. A shadow. Something was inside the tree. The next morning, I told my parents what I had seen, but they dismissed it as a nightmare. "You probably just dreamt it," my mom said, sipping her coffee. But when my dad plugged in the lights again, every single bulb burst at once. My mom let out a startled scream, jumping back as shards of glass rained onto the floor. That was when my dad decided to check the tree. He brushed aside the branches, searching for loose wires or anything unusual, until his hand froze. Buried deep within the tree was something small and metallic, tangled among the branches. He pulled it out, revealing a rusted metal tag, barely readable. The name engraved on it made my blood run cold. Miller family, December 1963. "Who are the Millers?" Jamie asked, peering over my dad's shoulder. My dad went pale. Without a word, he grabbed his phone and started searching. A heavy silence filled the room as he scrolled through an article, his face growing paler with each passing second. Finally, he whispered, "Oh my God." The Miller family had lived in our town over 50 years ago. They had a tradition. Every Christmas, they would cut down their own tree from the woods behind their house. But in 1963, something went horribly wrong. Their house was found abandoned on Christmas morning. The fireplace was still burning, their dinner still on the table, presents still under the tree. But the family was gone, vanished without a trace. The only thing left behind was their Christmas tree, its branches covered in deep claw-like scratches. I swallowed hard, looking back at our tree. "We have to get rid of it," I said. My dad didn't argue. He grabbed the tree, dragging it outside into the yard. But as soon as he let go, a freezing wind howled through the air, nearly knocking him off his feet. The tree stood upright on its own. That night, as we lay in bed, we heard something scratching at the windows. The next morning, we tried to burn it. My dad doused it in lighter fluid, but no matter how many matches he struck, the tree wouldn't catch fire. It simply sat there, its branches twitching, shifting ever so slightly. We had no choice but to bury it deep in the woods, covering it with rocks and leaving it behind. We never spoke of it again, but every Christmas Eve, without fail, we wake up to find a single pine needle in the center of our living room floor. Like a reminder, like a warning. They say Christmas is the most magical time of the year. For me, it used to be. Until the night I saw him. It was December 24th, 2016, and I was house-sitting for my aunt and uncle in rural Maine. They had gone to Florida for the holidays and needed someone to watch over their home and two elderly golden retrievers. I thought it would be a peaceful, cozy Christmas alone. No crowds, no stress, just me, a warm fire, and a stack of classic Christmas movies. The house was tucked away at the edge of a dense forest. The nearest neighbor was over a mile away. It was beautiful and remote. Too remote, I'd come to realize. The day started normally enough. Snow began falling around noon and didn't stop. By nightfall, it had turned into a full-on blizzard. The trees outside were swaying in the wind, and the sky was a swirling sheet of white. I curled up on the couch with a cup of hot chocolate and the dogs asleep at my feet, watching Home Alone and trying not to feel the eerie silence of being alone in a big house during a storm. It was around 11:15 p.m. when I first heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the front door. Knock, knock, knock. It was so out of place that I initially thought it was something falling outside. A branch, maybe. But then I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up, heart starting to pound. The dogs lifted their heads and growled softly, something they never did. I muted the TV and stood, moving cautiously toward the door. There was a small frosted glass window next to it, just enough to see a vague silhouette. What I saw chilled me to my core. A man, standing completely still, wearing a full Santa Claus suit. Not the cheap kind either. It looked thick, old-fashioned, almost Victorian. His beard was long and curled, too perfect to be real, and the hat drooped slightly to one side. His face was half obscured by the frost, but I could make out enough to see that he wasn't smiling, just staring. I didn't know what to do. Open the door? Absolutely not. I hadn't heard a car, and in this weather, anyone out here on foot would be either in trouble or trouble. I waited, hoping he'd go away. Then he raised one hand and slowly waved. That wave, it was too slow, too deliberate. It wasn't a friendly Merry Christmas wave. It was like he was acknowledging me, like he knew I was there, and was telling me that it didn't matter. I stepped back and locked the door instantly. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I backed away from the door, watching through the frost. The figure just stood there for another few seconds, then turned slowly and walked out of view. I waited, listened. Nothing. After a few minutes, I dared to peek through the living room window. He was gone. No footsteps, no sign of him, just the howling wind and falling snow. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with a flashlight and a fire poker in my hand, jumping at every creak and gust of wind. The dogs were restless too. pacing, growling at the windows. At some point around 3 a.m., I must have dozed off. When the sun finally came up, I forced myself to go outside. The snow had stopped. The front yard was untouched, except for one thing: footprints in the snow. They led from the road to the front porch, right up to the door. But that wasn't what made my stomach turn. The footprints continued toward the woods. I followed them, slowly, heart in my throat. They trailed into the trees, and then just stopped. No return prints, no path veering left or right. Just a single line of footsteps that vanished 20 feet into the forest. I stood there in the cold, breath visible in the morning air, unable to explain it. How could someone just disappear in fresh snow? It didn't make sense. No one could move through that terrain without leaving a trace. I called the local sheriff's department. A deputy came out and took a look. He chalked it up to a traveler or some prankster, but even he seemed rattled. "Weird," was all he said. I didn't mention the Santa suit. I didn't think he'd believe me. That night, I drove back to the city. I couldn't stay in that house another night. My aunt and uncle thought I was overreacting. Maybe I was. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And the worst part, every Christmas Eve since then, at exactly 11:15 p.m., I get a knock at my door. Just 3. Always 3. No one is ever there when I look. But last year, I found a single snowy boot print on my front porch. And this year, I've already started hearing things. Faint knocks in the walls. Quiet footsteps upstairs when I'm alone. So this Christmas, I won't be watching movies or sipping cocoa. I'll be waiting, flashlight in hand, just like that night. Because I don't think he's finished with me yet. And I don't think he's just knocking anymore. We were all looking forward to spending Christmas together. Our usual holiday traditions had grown predictable over the years. So when Daniel suggested renting a historic mansion for the weekend, we all jumped at the idea. A cozy, secluded Christmas retreat with a giant fireplace, snow-covered trees, and warm drinks by the fire. It sounded perfect. That's how we ended up at Hill Manor, a towering Gothic-style mansion hidden deep in the forest, miles away from the nearest town. It was rumored to be over a century old, abandoned for decades before a real estate company restored it and put it up as a vacation rental. As we pulled up the long, winding driveway, the mansion loomed over us, its dark windows like empty eyes watching our every move. The snow-covered grounds were untouched, and despite its recent renovation, the house still held an eerie, forgotten air. The moment I stepped out of the car, a strange chill crept over me, not just from the winter air, but something else, something unseen. An old woman was waiting for us on the porch. She introduced herself as Mrs. Halloway, the caretaker. Small and frail, her silver hair pulled tightly back into a bun. She clutched the keys in her hands as if hesitant to give them to us. "Are you sure you want to stay here?" she asked, her sharp eyes scanning each of us. Daniel laughed, slinging an arm around my shoulders. "Of course. This place is amazing." Her gaze darkened. "This house has history," she murmured, "and not all of it is pleasant." The warning sent a shiver through me, but Daniel, ever the skeptic, dismissed it. Mrs. Halloway sighed and finally handed over the keys. But before leaving, she gave us one last warning. "Stay in your rooms at night," she said, "and whatever you do, don't light the red candle in the dining room." Her words lingered in my mind long after she disappeared down the driveway. That night, the mansion felt both grand and suffocating. The interior was beautiful: tall bookshelves, an ornate staircase, heavy velvet curtains, and a dining table long enough to seat a dozen guests. A massive Christmas tree stood in the parlor, its old-fashioned decorations shimmering in the dim light. But there was something off. The silence was heavy, like the house was listening. As we gathered around the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa and exchanging gifts, I tried to shake the unease creeping up my spine. Shadows flickered in the corners of the room, stretching unnaturally against the walls. The chandelier above us swayed slightly, though there was no draft. Then, at precisely midnight, The peace shattered. A loud thump echoed from the floor above. We all froze. "What was that?" I whispered. Daniel scoffed. "Old house. Probably just the wood settling." But then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps creaked across the ceiling above us. One by one, they moved from room to room, pausing directly above where we sat. The sound sent ice through my veins. Then a whisper, low, indistinct, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I turned to Daniel, my voice barely a breath. "You heard that, right?" This time, even he couldn't deny it. His face had gone pale. We tried to ignore it, convincing ourselves it was just our imaginations. But when we finally retreated to our rooms, the real horror began. At some point during the night, I woke up to a suffocating chill. The air was ice cold, my breath visible in the darkness. I pulled my blankets tighter around me when I noticed something. My door was open. I was certain I'd closed it before bed. A dim, flickering glow spilled in from the hallway, casting eerie shadows along the floor. My heart pounded as I forced myself to step out, my bare feet freezing against the wooden floor. The glow was coming from downstairs, from the dining room. And when I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw it. The red candle. The one Mrs. Halloway had warned us not to light. It was burning. The flames swayed unnaturally, as if moved by an unseen breath. The air around me felt thick, charged with something I couldn't explain. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stepped closer, my trembling hand reaching toward the flame. Then a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." I gasped and spun around. The room was empty. But I felt them. They were here. The shadows in the corners stretched toward me, their shapes twisting. Then, from the reflection in the dining room window, I saw them, ghostly figures standing behind me. A woman in a Victorian dress, her face contorted in sorrow. A tall man with hollow eyes, his expression twisted in rage. More figures lingered in the corners, barely visible, watching. I couldn't move. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, pressing into my mind. "They won't let you leave." A sharp gust of wind blasted through the room, and suddenly, the chandelier swung wildly above me. The entire house seemed to groan, its very foundation shaking. I ran. I bolted up the stairs, nearly tripping over my feet as I pounded on my friends' doors. "Wake up! We have to go!" Daniel swung his door open, eyes wide with fear. "What the hell is going on?" The candle. It was lit. I gasped. I saw them. The ghosts. They're real. Then we heard it. A low guttural moan echoed from the hallway. Slowly, our heads turned. At the end of the corridor stood a shadow. Tall, faceless, looming. It pulsed, shifting, as if it was pulling itself together from the darkness itself. The air turned suffocating. Then, the whisper, "You shouldn't have come." The next few seconds were a blur. We grabbed our bags and ran, barreling down the stairs as the house seemed to come alive around us. Doors slammed, the walls groaned, an invisible force pushing against us. The front door wouldn't open. "Please!" I yanked at the handle. Then, suddenly, it burst open, and we tumbled into the snow. The moment we crossed the threshold, the chaos stopped. The house fell silent. When we turned back, the candle was gone. The next morning, we left without looking back. The drive home was filled with silence, none of us able to fully process what had happened. Out of curiosity, I later searched for the history of Hill Manor. 100 years ago, on Christmas Eve, the family that lived there disappeared without a trace. The only clue left behind was a single red candle, burning in the dining room. Since then, every Christmas Eve, their spirits return, trapped, searching for someone to take their place. And every Christmas, the candle is lit. We were lucky. We escaped. But I know in my heart that Hill Manor still stands, waiting for its next visitors. So if you ever find yourself in a secluded mansion, far from civilization, and you see a red candle burning in the dining room, don't blow it out. Don't touch it. And most importantly, leave immediately.